It's always good to have you join the conversation right here on the AM show, especially as we hit that segment where we discuss the newspapers. Of course, Sweetie Abochi in the lead, and a comfortable lead, if you like, on the AM show. But time now for us to discuss the salient matters from the newspapers. But before we get into that, and before I tell you who my guest is, let me let you know that Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic helps us bring you this segment every weekday morning. And if you've not paid attention to certain aspects of your health, you're walking that fine line. Your health is your wealth, as we usually put it. So if you're a man, and especially if you've hit your late 30s or 40 and above, mostly, and you've never checked out your prostate and what is happening there, you could be in line for a rude shock. I'm not praying for that, but if you don't know, who knows what could be happening there. If you're a woman and you've never checked out your fertility, you're planning on giving birth, or you've given birth before, you want more children, and you think, oh, all things be equal, you should be able to produce. That's not how it works. Again, you do know that a large percentage of women develop fibroids. It's just that in some cases, it doesn't develop to the point where it becomes a problem. In order to know, why don't you just pass by Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic? And that's what they're offering you. These two screenings for free. If you're a man, prostate screening for free. If you're a woman, fertility screening for free. Reach out to them at their branches. Now, here in Accra, they're at Spintex, opposite the Shell signboard. Kumasi, Kronum Abwehian, behind the Angel Educational Complex. Takrade, Anaji State, Tema, Community 22, Techiman Hanswa, and the Siama and Zema. Their call lines, 0244 867-068 or 0274-234-321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. But just the start of the news review, joining me this morning, I have a development economist, senior lecturer at the University for Development Studies. You know him, I know him. Our man, Dr. Michael Ayamga, is the guest. Good morning, Doc.
Good morning, Ben. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to see you.
It's good to see you too. I see there's a bit of a different background today. I like the background. I like your background. Right.
Thank you. Thank you.
So a number of matters have happened between, I always do this, the last time we spoke and today. What would you like to talk about this morning to set the tone for the conversations we're about to have?
I would say maybe the reshuffling. We have some people out, new set of people in. Is this whether a step backwards? So I think it's something worth commenting on. What I feel is we have brought in a team at the last minute that cannot even get the opportunity to look into their own policy. The finance minister, for example, may never get to present a full budget. And we are expecting them to turn things around. So I felt that first, that was an exercise in futility. Secondly, you have brought in people, many of whom we are thinking are not the strong power brokers within the party, or either deputy ministers or people in the periphery. So their inability to exert some authority on the already established brand names within the party and its structures, and therefore be able to resist some pressures from without is a problem. So I am particularly worried that we did this reshuffle at the last minute. I have been happy and sad for my very good friend, Mohamed Amin Anta. We know each other. I know him to be a very good a scholar, technocrat, and somebody, if he had was brought in early, would have done things a bit more differently than Ken Oforiatta did them. And he coming at this time and we not getting the opportunity to really test his mettle is something that makes me sad. I'm happy he's become...
But he's still been given the position, no matter what, he can prove something. He's already started talking about the GRA, for example, exceeding their revenue targets and all of that. He can do something.
I know Anta, just the way we call him, and Even back his days at school and when he was MC in Tamale, Anton was someone who would reach across board, look for ideas. And even when you had presiding members and assemblymen at his back, he would tell, okay, let me see how I can keep them quiet, but we have to achieve something. So he always reached out for ideas. And if we had an Honorable Amin Anta maybe 2 years ago, he would have done this IMF thing earlier. In fact, if he was finance minister, I can tell you for sure that because he was very consultative, he would have gone to the IMF way earlier, maybe by 2019. It only shows that the president he knows how to appoint a good team, but he just wasn't interested in getting them in place. Because to be fair, this is a more diverse team. I say it is a team of gleaners because they are not coming to implement their own policy. They are coming when resources are gone. So it's a gleaning squad, if you ask me. And many of them were deputy ministers and probably working under some of the ministers that were moved. So it's also a cabinet of amoberes. You realize that at the end of the day, they have little they can do on their own with very little resources to pursue them. But it just shows that the president, if he was actually up to having a cabinet that was independent, that was more focused on the job rather than policing various quarters within the party, he could have appointed a cabinet. And while we had that in place all this while, when Ghanaians were talking and worried that things were not going well and the president ignored them, members of parliament tried to remove the finance minister severally, allowed him to go on, secure the deal, almost commit all the funds that are available plus those that are likely to come in future. And then you bring a utility player like my good friend and asking him to perform magic. First of all, if he decides to change contractual agreements now, not sign off on some documents, he's going to be hanged. So he's between a rock and a hard place, even though I know him to be someone who could have achieved a lot for this country. It's rather unfortunate we are bringing him at this time when his hands are tied behind him, a very heavy engine block hung to his neck, and he's on a boat, threatening to be pushed underwater if he goes any other way than I agreed to. So I pray for Hunter that at least he's able to hold the fort until a substantive government comes in. But I don't think he will get to read a budget. I'm quite sure even in the unlikely event that the MPP wins, he will not be made a minister. If Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia can commit that in the unlikely event that he becomes a president, he will appoint Mohamed Amin Atta as the finance minister to continue, I can say this country is simultaneous.
You're saying even if he, in the unlikely event that he can become president, are you writing off the vice president? Are you writing him off at this point? You never know. Like Sir John said, fear delegates, but sometimes fear voters too.
You know, sometimes we just engage in the sarcasm just for the talking sake. But I have been saying that the vice president, President Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, is on the quest looking for a running mate, and he's actually looking for his replacement because I think that the deck is stacked against him. It must be something out of the ordinary for him to become a president. Yes, he's vice president. He can ride on the wings of incumbency and try to pull up an upset, but then it will be an upset. And if he doesn't win, his running mate becomes the front runner for 2028. And that is why they are lining up behind him, going down on their knees and begging him. I don't think they are doing that to be vice president. They are looking for the opportunity to project and market themselves. And should Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia not make it, he then falls way behind the queue, and his running mate and those he has projected in this next electioneering phase will become the front runners of the party. So it's a Game of Thrones out there, and everybody is playing it well. And I expect that at the end of the day, I believe Ghanaians will send a resounding message to politicians, everybody, that if you mismanage this country, we'll come at you. I want that to happen so that nobody takes this country for granted. But I also think that if I'm the vice president now and I'm having to select a running mate, I'll look for someone who wants to be a vice president rather than someone who has presidential ambitions. Because his chance of coming back, like from current President Otumfuo did 3 times, is going to be narrowly close if he doesn't win the election and he has a power broker within the party as his running mate. He's done and dusted.
All right. Well, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts there. Let's quickly get into the newspapers, find out what they have to say. We'll start with the Daily Graphic newspaper. Government committed to resolving Ahmed Swale's murder, Attorney General assures. I mean, we've beaten down, dusted the story, but of course the Daily Graphic still brings it in here. The Attorney General has said, listen, we don't even have a proper docket. No proper docket has been presented by the police CID, among other things. Nothing worth trying anybody over. Daily Graphic drags Transport Ministry to RTI Commission. More people with higher education unemployed. That's according to a Ghana Statistical Service report. Ahead of 2024 elections, avoid hate speech. Peace Council tells political parties. Now on the back page, contractor locks school over unpaid services and burial rights of Sunyanehene announced. So I'll start with that story about a contractor. A contractor yesterday locked out learners and teachers of the Achim Asene Roman Catholic primary school in the eastern region over unpaid services for the school project. The contractor, Konto Owusu-Agyekum, said his appeal for the relevant authorities to redeem the cost of his services for the construction of the school had remained unheeded. In the morning of yesterday, he locked the over 300 learners and their teachers from the classrooms, leading to a standoff with the chief executive of the district assembly, Alex Inkum. Indeed, it took the physical intervention of officials of the Asene Manso Akroso District Directorate of Education to prevent full-scale fisticuffs between Mr. Inkum and Mr. Owusu-Agyekum over the locking of the school. The DCE informed on the phone about the incident, arrived at the scene and found the learners and their teachers stranded on the school compound as the contractor had locked them out because the Ghana Education Trust Fund had not paid him for the project he completed in 2020. The DCE threatened to forcibly open the school for the pupils and teachers to get access to the facility, but the contractor, accompanied by his sons, prevented him from doing so, resulting in an exchange of words as tempers threatened to hit the roof. It said that Wahala never they finished for this country. In recent times, we were also told about schools that had blackouts because the ECG had, taken off or disconnected their lights. This, of course, is a primary school, GET fund related, but then with all of these in the educational sector, I don't know. But I'll give you an opportunity to react to that. Just hold for me. Let me add this one. Ahead of 2024 elections, avoid hate speech. Peace Council tells political parties. So the National Peace Council has called on political parties to avoid hate speech and the use of intemperate language in the 2024 electioneering campaign. That, it said, would ensure that the country remained peaceful after this year's elections so that the citizenry could go about their business without hindrances. Quoting them, our admonition to the political parties is for them to use temperate language in whatever they say to ensure that at the end of the elections, the nation will still be peaceful. The board chairman of the MPC, Reverend Dr. Ernest Edujemfi, said. Any reactions to these two stories before we look at other stories?
As you are reading the story about this contractor, I'm shaking my head.
Why?
What kind of country? Are we in a banana republic? We need to maybe get the facts right. Did the contractor complete the project? Did he duly hand over the project to the Ghana Education Service? If that happens, anytime he enters there, he's an intruder, and the security services should have picked him up by now. I cannot even imagine.
But we are told the edifice is there and he's not been paid since 2020. It also reminds me, actually, let me chip in, of some traffic lights. You would realize that some of them are not functioning. Do you know what? Sometimes, do you know what the case is? Some people have been contracted to do certain things and they have not been paid. So there's a way of locking the traffic lights. There's a locking system. It's happened right here in Accra. And they are able to do that. Can you imagine that?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Everything is breaking down in this country. The institutions are breaking down. So people think that government only understands the language of violence and non-compliance. And that is why you have these behaviors coming on. And I was just saying, I can't imagine that I'm at work and I hear that somebody has gone to take my kids out. I don't know what I would do if I get there. And you also realize that it's scary that he is an intruder, even though he constructed the premises. If he has it Ghana Education Service, from that point on, he is an intruder if he enters that place. And I'm shocked that he's still working. Maybe it is the usual Ghanaian thing that the thing was not concluded. It wasn't completed, and we moved in as work was going on. Under that arrangement, he probably still has some control over the process. But if he handed this thing over, raised a certificate, and he has not been, there are laid down procedures for recovering money owed to people in this country. We have our courts and our legal system that can handle that. To take matters into your own hands and go endanger the lives of people's wards because you have not been paid is way, way overboard. But you see, there is no smoke without fire. You realize that resources come in, and this government picks and selects who should be paid and who should not. And there are some maybe party-friendly or friends of ministers and their friends who get paid, and the rest are left way behind the queue. So they feel that they have to do something. It's because the institutions are not working, as I've always maintained, that there is no law and order, there is no due process, there is no meritocracy. So nobody gets a term that he has to wait for. If you go to buy anything, you stay in the queue. When it's your turn, you get served. This government doesn't know that. It can pick you from way back the queue and settle you and leave you because they think that you are not directly owned by somebody who wants also power. So yes, it is lawless behavior. It is untoward, but I think that if you have a system that does not follow any due process and is haphazard like we have now, we are going to have these things going on. But nonetheless, I believe the security agencies need to act. They need to get to the bottom of the matter. If anybody has constructed anything, handed it over, it becomes state property, and tampering with it is against the law, and the fellow must be dealt with regardless of whether he's a contractor or not. But hey, here's the system. If they didn't get the contract through due process, they probably were sold the contract by somebody and they executed it, and you are not paying them. People have to survive. I know somebody just 3 blocks here who constructed a whole lot of things, and now you get to his house and he's drinking porridge. This was a very rich man I'm talking about. He's drinking porridge. And the other day, tell me, Mike, can you believe that this is what I'm taking for lunch? And he's owed millions of Ghana cedis, and this government is not paying and turning them into poverty. So at a certain point in time, when you are faced between the choice of dying and doing something crazy, I think you choose something crazy. So that's why they have done.
And if I may, on that, it's not just that. You know, for example, the National Health Insurance Scheme and facilities that often would give out medication and all of that. I was speaking to someone recently who is owed about 13 million Ghana cedis. Services rendered, drugs given out, and now the person doesn't want to give out anymore because they are not paying me. You know, stuff like that. It becomes problematic.
Every day you meet people at the airport, they are holding guinea fowls, smokes, and other things, going to work the Ministry of Finance from office to office. You have to distribute a significant chunk of what is owed you before you are even considered for a payment. I think that so that is my problem. I say things as they are. I don't have
I'm not even questioning that. That's another angle the person told me of. To help him recoup his money, someone said he had to pay part of the money.
Yes, a lot of it, and it's just, and you see the problem is that they demand that upfront. They don't even pay you for you to come and say, oh, thank you. That way to give you the opportunity to work with a clear conscience that you are showing appreciation. No, here they let you pay upfront. So you have contractors now who have completed projects going around begging for money to go and settle people so they can pay them. And even they are not guaranteed that after settling them, they get paid.
Exactly.
Where we are as a nation. And that's why I say that if for nothing at all, we need some time for the institutions to reboot, for some sanity to be restored, for new players to come, at least to take them 2-3 years before they start behaving this way. It will give the system where refresh itself. It is unfortunate we are in this place. But Ben, you quite important here.
So on these next matters, we are left with practically about 10 minutes, so we have to speed up with the responses. So you go ahead, but just make it a bit brief, Dr. Yamda.
Yes, I think that the ECG sometimes have to understand that, you see, if the chief's cows enter the chief's rice farm, you are faced with a serious dilemma. Do you kill the cows or you just drive them out? Every loss there is going to affect the government. You have government institutions that most of the time government is not up to speed with providing them subventions and resources so that they can pay their electricity bills. You go to disconnect them, and sometimes hospitals, clinics, people that need electricity to keep and save lives. You have ECG adopting this Rambo style way of operations and going to disconnect. The government of Ghana owes 50 billion. What are we doing? So it's not that the people are different from the country they live in. Everybody owes. Government is restructuring debts. What do you think will be the position of individuals and institutions who have not received government allocations for several months going into years? So to normally have this thing going on, I believe is a huge problem. Let me be honest with you. We are not going to get to the point where many of these state institutions are going to be able to pay realistic electricity tariffs at quite reasonable times or at periods that will allow the ECB to operate. We need to get to that point where we say, okay, some people should not pay for electricity, institutions, because government have to be paying directly from resources. And I think that it is not fair to go and punish individuals, institutions, just because we want to appear to be working. We know that, yes, they owe electricity, but it's on paper. Balance it. Government owes government. I think that the ECG should look elsewhere and allow sanity to prevail in these institutions. It is one too many, and sometimes you are not able to turn back the clock of time to reverse the damage that this power outage is caused to institutions. The earlier we face the music, the better. That's what I would say on this matter. Yeah.
All right. Let's get into some other stories now. More people with higher education unemployed, that's according to a Ghana Statistical Service report, and more educated Ghanaians cannot find work to do, although they are available to work, a study by the Ghana Statistical Service has revealed. Almost a quarter of persons, representing 22.3%, who experienced an unemployment spell for a 21-month period from January 2022 to September 2023, had completed or graduated from tertiary institutions. While almost 48% of persons experiencing unemployment spells had completed secondary education. The GSS study defined unemployment spells as an uninterrupted period within which a person had stayed unemployed, although he had the capacity and the willingness to work. Now, in other stories, low participation of women in politics threat to development. That's according to the Women Manifesto Coalition. I am in agreement with them. Government committed to resolve Ahmed Swale's murder. I've already looked into that bit. Mahama to address NDC's policy dialogue tomorrow, and the leadership of the NDC in collaboration with the NDC Social Democracy Lab and NDC Policy Think Tank is to host a national policy dialogue that focuses on the 24-hour economy and prioritizing the policy proposal to transform and rebuild Ghana. I feel that there are many more questions as well that the former president has to answer in respect of the 24-hour economy. I've already said that I'm in full support of it, just as I am in full support of free SHS, is the application. So to avoid another free SHS situation, 24-hour economy, fine. But the implementation, it's not enough to say we'll give incentives and we'll do this. What will go into it? We need more minutiae when it comes to planning so that it's clearer. It's like going into an exam where you've just studied a little of this, a little of that, and a little of that. it can be difficult. But when you've covered all the bases, it is more comprehensive. That's all I am saying. And then there is this story. Daily Graphic drags Transport Ministry to RTI Commission. Move to secure updates on proposed Ghana Airlines. So the Daily Graphic has petitioned the Right to Information Commission over the refusal of the Ministry of Transport to provide updates on the yet-to-be-established national carrier. The information was requested in September last year under the RTI Act 2018. 989. In its petition, the Daily Graphic explained that the move had become necessary because the ministry had frustrated all attempts to access the information on the proposed airline. And we here at the Multimedia Group have gone through same, even with the Ghana Airport Company. You ask yourself, what sometimes they don't want to give the information out for? What are they hiding? Doc.
Yes, I'll take the last story upwards. I think that we have a big problem here, and that is why our legislature takes delight in passing laws, because they don't intend to enforce and implement them. The right to information is being one of them. The law existing is one thing, compliance is another. You have various people, researchers and everybody looking for information. They are blatantly refused. And nobody does anything. If you report, nobody even believe that you are actually doing that. And that is the problem we have in the country. That
right.
Somebody in government, president, vice president, parliamentarians, when they break the law and you are asking for them to be brought into account, people think you are crazy. And that is the issue we are dealing with here. If it's an individual, you will deal with it. If you are a poor person, you will deal with it. But once you have some access to power, you seem to be above the law. And that is the norm in this country. It's unfortunate, but that is the situation in which we find ourselves. And I don't think it's going to change anytime soon, unless our institutions hold one of these entities to account and make an example of them, to let them know that the right to information bill is a key pillar of our democracy, and anyone that contravenes it should be made to face the full rigors of the law. If that is done, then you have a chance that it might work, and the purposes for which it was promulgated can be seen, and we'll realize the benefits. Otherwise, we are in very... I'll comment shortly on your take on Mahama's dialogue on the 24-hour economy. I want to tell you something. I think that there is more out there on the 24-hour economy than we have for planning for food and jobs, one district, one factory. They were disastrous. I think that the former president...
No, I'm not making comparisons at all. I'm only saying that moving Ghana forward, we need to do more. You remember Imani Africa, for example, when in the getting ahead of elections, they would come through with reports about, oh, this promise is realistic or practical. This is not, and all of that. That's what I'm saying. That come through with something so watertight, concrete, that no one can even, and it creates a clear plan. It's like some of Nkrumah's blueprints, right? This is it. This is how we're going to do it. Or some of our past development plans, even in the Gaggisberg era, the Kolibus and the rest. It was clear. But sometimes we say these things and then the minutiae, the slight minimal details of how to execute. That's why I'm saying that we should go past that as a country. I hear a lot of them, Dr. Baumia, former President Mahama himself, and some of the things they are saying. But when it goes down to it, how will you source funds? How will you execute it? Where are you getting the funds from? You are in the middle of an IMF program. How will you manage it? Which entities are going to be involved? Like how year on year, how much do you hope to raise? Those are the little bits in there. And I'm hoping to get more answers on those.
Yeah, I expect more information to come out very soon. At least those of us preview to some of the information here and there. I believe that there's a lot out there to form a basis for a policy. And I believe that in due course, if the former president decides to share them, Ghanaians will be very happy. Of course, there is the tendency of copying manifestos and policies here, like the reasons the NDP gave for not sharing their 3 SHS, 1V, 1D, that the NDC was going to copy it. You now realize that in an exam room, when you are passing by somebody writing, the fellow is covering script. It's not because he's trying to prevent you from copying his correct answers. He may just be embarrassed by what you see or her writing. So that could be the latter reason here. But hey, he's on the former president. If he thinks he wants to send out more there, it is good for his campaign. And the president, to be a former president, put on the square as if he's already in government and he has to be defending policy when he still has to be campaigning.
Okay.
So he needs to balance how much he was able to send his message across, rather than make it look like he's defending a budget or he's defending a policy as a government. The two are different things here. Campaigning is still key, and he should probably not fall for that trap completely. Staying glued to discussing the nitty-gritties of 24 economy when the broad framework is out there, and anyone who is a technocrat can begin to analyze and make comparisons with the jurisdictions. This is what I would say. The president, the ball in his court. But if I'm cautious how much I put out there.
All right. Let's go through the last stack of papers and then we pick your reactions and we're gone. The Ghanaian Times newspaper, set priorities right to fix economy. Otumfuo Osei Tutu tasks finance minister designate. We've heard a lot of that from yesterday. LGBTQ plus bill, Afenyomarkin loses bid to substitute imprisonment with non-custodial sentence, and that's been topical as well. Maslock fails to recover over 291.5 million Ghana cedis in loans disbursed over the last 12 years. Maslock has become another thing altogether in terms of people taking money and not paying. Will ensure fitting 67th Independence Day anniversary celebration. That's according to the Eastern Regional Minister. I'll do the story on page 9 before I move on to the next paper. So, Deputy Majority Leader Alexander Afenyomarkin has lost his bid to convince Parliament to substitute custodial sentences with non-custodial sentences in the promotion of, what we call the anti-gay bill. The Afutu MP lost his advocacy after the House voted against his 12 proposed amendments, which in his view would promote reformation of victims and practitioners of same-sex relationships. Then, the Daily Guide newspaper, Kumasi International Airport ready April. Parliament chases MIIF over $12 million Ejapa expense, and political parties appoint leadership. That's according to the Speaker. He says political parties appoint leadership. And we've seen that happen with the NDC already, with the moving away of Haruna Idrisu and the coming in of Dr. Cassiel Atuforsen. CAF, the Komfanoti Teaching Hospital, loses 200 nurses in a year. That's the story there. Those are the stories I'll look at. If you have any reactions, we can take them. The New Finder newspaper finally says $35 million Commander Sugar Factory beyond recovery. That's according to GAO, the General Agricultural Workers Union. You can pick one or two of these and we can reflect on them and get out of here.
Yeah, of course, I'm particularly worried about the situation of the Commander factory. It looks like we are a sick nation, and we sink all that amount of money into a project, and we play politics with it to the point that it never comes to fruition. And most of the time, it is a problem with almost all the political parties we have in this country, that they don't value knowledge and expertise. And when they come into power, petitions distributed as if it is just to make everybody happy, forgetting that performance is key. I believe that sometimes, even if you don't give appointments to people who can do it, consult them behind the scenes. Some of these disasters can be aborted. To have such a huge amount of money come into a project that is not functional, people are working without jobs, sugarcane is rotting all over the place, yet nobody is being asked to face the music. It's a big problem for us.
Right.
And law enforcement ought to be more up and doing with these things, rather than always following people who say something out of maybe by accident, and you are asked to come and explain when there are a whole lot of issues to be dealing with. I'd like to mention something about the Peace Council in your last call for sanity.
So that'll be your final point. Go ahead.
Yeah, that, and I think that, yes, Peace Council have done their job, but the media houses have to do it. You have been anchoring this program and hosting many of us here. You keep us in check. I remember our last interaction when I almost went overboard. You called me to order. And it is the responsibility of every media house to know that they have a responsibility to safeguard the peace and tranquility in this country in this period. And they shouldn't allow politicians and callers to go overboard. That is where you have to separate maybe pure and true journalism from just the rest. And I think that they need to emulate what many of you do here, getting the best out of us without allowing us to go unhinged. Peace Council have called, the media ought to take and make sure we are up and doing. Yeah.
Thank you, Doc, for joining us for another morning, this Thursday morning. We're grateful for your time. Dr. Michael Ayamga is a development economist and senior lecturer at the University for Development Studies. He joined the News Review. Right before we go into sports, Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic helping us bring you this segment. They're offering you prostate screening for free if you're a man, fertility screening for free if you're a woman. Reach out to them at any of their branches here in Accra. Spintex opposite the Shell signboard, Kumasi, Kronum, Abuehia behind the Angel Educational Complex. There's Takrady Anaji State, Tema Community 22, Techiman Hanso and Esiaman. Their call lines 0244 867 068 or 0274 234 321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. Bringing us to the end of the news review and the start of sports. Up next.